Welcome to the Planning and Community Development Committee meeting. Welcome. Sarah, maybe can we first of all get an approval for the minutes of our last meeting, please? Supervisor Leggett, second by Supervisor Stroud. All those in favor? Aye. Sarah, we have a couple of items.
Yep, super quick meeting. Here's the agenda. So we just have two resolutions. One is to authorize a new contract with Advocate LLC. This is for social media and marketing support for the First Wilderness Heritage Corridor. This is covered mostly by Smart Growth Grant funding that we receive from DEC. A little bit is covered by First Wilderness LWRP grant funding, and then a little under $7,000 covered by occupancy tax. So this is to do some social media, Instagram and Facebook posts, to create a panel, advertising panel for display at Albany Airport, and then to update all of the panels and the associated brochures in the Lake George Visitor Center on Beach Road, which are 10 plus years old and could use a refresh. So we put an RFP out. We got 12 responses, and we selected Advocate, which is based in Glens Falls. So the bid tabulation sheet is attached. I have the proposal if anybody is interested in looking at it.
Great. Can we get a motion to get this on the floor as far as Advocate? Supervisor Leggett, seconded by Supervisor Stroud. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item number 2.
Okay. Number 2 is a resolution request to apply for a New York State, another New York State DEC Smart Growth Grant. These don't require any match. The grant deadline is June 7th. We most likely will apply for a trail-related project, still to be determined. We need to have some meetings with DEC and the Park Agency in the coming couple of weeks.
Great. Can we get a motion? Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. Supervisor Bramer, did you want to say something?
Just for the planning department, if they could let us know about the Climate Smart Communities application.
Yes. So next month the CFA announcement will come out May 1st. So at the next meeting we'll have a full presentation and keep all these programs straight. Grant, we're definitely planning to apply for it. We were asked to have a short committee meeting to allow time for the Lehigh Cement presentation today, but we do have a planned presentation next Monday meeting.
Yes, I'd like to thank Supervisor Bramer for her direction as it relates to getting us to a point to be a smart community in terms of our climate and our environment. So thank you for your efforts, Supervisor Bramer. We are pleased to have Lehigh Cement with us this morning. Welcome. We have David Dreyer, who's their plant manager, Jana Fredericks, who's their environmental engineer, and John Bro from Behan Communications. So welcome, and we're here today to, just in terms of information, to learn more about you guys in terms of what your permitting request is through the state of New York. We're all interested in clean water, clean air, and that goes, so we're all in the same boat in this world together. So I don't know how you guys want to start off. If go ahead, Mr. Deckies.
I want to thank you for this opportunity to be here. It's been a long road for Lehigh Cement, and we're happy to answer any questions from the public, from our local officials community. This is an important initiative for Lehigh Cement, so we want to make sure that the right information is available to you guys. And with that, we're happy to be here today. So this is a presentation on our alternative fuels proposal. Some of you may have attended our community meeting we had back in late February at the Queensbury Hotel. So much of this presentation is from that meeting. My name is David Dreyer. I'm the plant manager. I've been in this position for just under a year, although I've been working at the cement plant for over almost 30 years in July. So I've been there a long time. Jana has a lot of experience in the environmental area. Also worked for Finch Paper, Glens Falls Water Department as well. She's our environmental manager in this position for just over 1 year, about a year and a half. And John Brott is also here to support us as well as our community liaison. Okay, so Lehigh's alternative fuel proposal, just a status report. We are proposing to replace 15% of our fossil fuels with an alternative fuel made up of 60% mix of plastic and 40% mix of cardboard fibers from recycled paper mills. That product is called Bragger Tail. We had some trial burns which were successful under the supervision of the DEC in 2017. That was reviewed, the emissions data from that study, and we were granted a draft permit in November of 2018. That opened up the public comment period, which was a period of 30 days initially. That was November 28th, somewhere about 2018. And that was really to get the view of the public and open up for any comments that they may have, which they submitted to the DEC. We answered most of those questions. We got a lot of questions from the community, Glens Falls, Queensbury, South Glens Falls, other agencies as well, Saratoga. And we met in person. We've done many meetings with local officials of the city of Glens Falls, Terry Warner, Saratoga, as well as many emails and correspondence through that period as well. We extended our period. Our public comment period was extended. Part of that was a weather event that delayed our public meeting in January. So we extended that period until through February. And we had our community informational meeting at the end of February. And that public comment period was officially closed on March 15th of 2019. So currently the New York State has our permit application, and they are reviewing the public comments, and they're looking to do a very thorough response and recommendation to the EPA, which we expect some information probably late May on the status of that approval or not. So here's a view of the plant. Our plant covers 2 counties and 3 towns. So if you look in this view, in the very back is our quarry. It's located in Saratoga County. It's divided by the Hudson River. We have a private bridge that spans the Hudson River. Also brings us into Warren County. Most of the plant itself is located in the town of Queensbury. Our silos and our office buildings down behind the plant are located in the city of Glens Falls. So the town line pretty much extends just past this building right through the center of our plant. So 3 towns and 2 counties. Lehigh Cement is the longest continuously operating gray cement plant in the United States. It was incorporated in 1893, so we've been here a long time. We celebrated 125 years last year in 2018. We're one of only 2 cement plants currently operating in New York State. We do have one competitor, Lafarge Holcim, which is located in Ravenna, New York. We are part of the Heidelberg Cement Group. That's our parent company out of Germany. We employ more than 90 employees working in Glens Falls. We also have a facility in Catskill, New York, which grinds our products, and also it's a cement terminal. We'll do our packaging there as well, masonry products, other cement products, and we'll ship that out in bags and also bulk. We do cover 800 acres in Warren and Saratoga counties. We manufacture 4 types of cement, Type 1, Type 2, which is your typical cements used in common foundations, sidewalks, road projects, highway projects. Type 3 is a product that's high early strength cement, so we make a very good Type 3 product that's mostly used for bridge beams. Any place you would want some high early strength, jersey barriers, precast products, things of that nature. And of course, our masonry products, which is your common block mortars and those types of products, stuccos. The iron clad brand has been associated with Glens Falls plants since the early 20th century. We still are proud of that brand today. Our plant has the capacity to produce about 560,000 metric tons of cement annually. A good percentage of that product is transferred to our cement in New York facility, which is just Hamlet and Catskill, just off the 9W, right on the Hudson River. From there, it's packaged and sold. About 500,000 tons of cement is equivalent to about 60,000 homes. It's also enough cement to produce a 2-lane highway from here to the Canadian border. Our plant is considered a small operation in today's society or today's world. Most cement plants that are built today, if they are, is probably a capacity of 2 million tons to 4 million tons per year of product. Cement plants in the U.S. at one time, I think, when I started my career, there was probably 300, close to 300 cement plants in North America. Today, there's probably 110 or less. So here's a little bit overview of how we make our cement. Our cement is produced from limestone. We're fortunate to have a very good resource of limestone in the town of Moreau. Some of the purest stone available in North America. In order to have a cement plant, you need to have a pure source of limestone that could be, it needs to be a source of calcium. Limestone, because it's a high source of calcium, desired product. Seashells would be another example. From the limestone that's reclaimed in our quarry, it's dumped into a crusher, anywhere from 24-inch to 36-inch size blocks. The crusher will pulverize that stone and break it down into 4-inch minus. From there, it's conveyed on conveyor belts across the river into our processing plant in Queensbury. From there, it goes into a grinding mill called the raw mill. It's a vertical mill with 3 rollers, and that pulverizes the stone into a very fine powder, kind of the consistency of talcum powder. From there, it's blown into the top of our preheat tower. It's preheated to a temperature of 1500 degrees before it enters the kiln. Once it enters the kiln, it becomes a molten state and a chemical transition occurs. Our flame temperature in the kiln is 3500 degrees, which produces total combustion of that product, turns it from a powder form to a molten liquid. There, all the chemical constituents combine, and you make a man-made rock called clinker. So at the back end of the kiln, at the discharge end, that clinker temperature is over 2500 degrees, and it's cooled in our cooler. From there, it's stored in silos, and then from there it goes to our 2 finished ball mills, where it's pulverized again into your final cement product. In the finished mills, you add products like gypsum, any additive grinding agents, and from there it's bagged and packaged, and most of our product goes out either on rail or on trucks in bulk form. We do have 2 key emission points in our process. The primary emission point is our electrostatic precipitator, and that's where most of the kiln flue gases are exhausted. On the cooler side, this is a dust collector, and that's just the excess air that's vented from the kiln and the cooler in the form of air, just hot air. So our current emission standards are strictly regulated by the federal EPA as well as the New York State DEC. And that's based on what the EPA has determined to be protective of human health and the environment. 2015, going back to the early 70s actually, is when most of the strict rules were brought down on industry as a whole in terms of pollution control, emissions control, air and water regulation. As the EPA recognized, big problems. So since then, a lot of changes have been made in industry. Technology has advanced significantly, and in 2015, they enacted a ruling called NESHAP. That ruling required all cement plants nationwide to lower emission limits and expanded the number of regulated constituents, primarily mercury and total hydrocarbons. Also, it lowered our regulations for particulate matter, which is the dust that you would see emitting from our stacks. Lehigh invested more than $6 million to meet those standards. One of the reasons why many cement plants today are no longer in operation is because of this ruling. It was either too expensive or they weren't able to achieve the maximum achievable control technologies that were required. Fortunately, in Glens Falls, we were able to meet those standards, and we still do today by a pretty wide margin. These new standards are reflected in Lehigh's current air emissions permit, and was reaffirmed again in 2018. There was a secondary industry review by the EPA, and they upheld those rules and those same limits because they are working. So the advanced controls that we have in our plant is electrostatic precipitator. That's our main dust collector. We have two main stacks where killed emissions are exhausted. That controls particulate matter. That's basically a electrically charged unit that magnetizes the particles before they're exhausted into the atmosphere. We have NOx reduction for NOx control, non-catalytic reduction. Hydrated lime for SO2. Activated carbon is used for mercury emissions. We also have temperature controls. We are limited and regulated by the DEC and the EPA to maintain a certain temperature at the inlet of our precipitator. And that helps to control global warming. Baghouse on the cooler vent controls our particulate emissions, and we have 41 dust collectors installed throughout the entire plant. In addition to that, we have numerous analyzers, and this is where most of that expense, that $6 million, had generated from. In addition to upgrades on our precipitator and our dust collector, a lot of that expense was related to our analyzers that we were required to install to manage our emissions. So we tested for mercury, THC, total hydrocarbons. Dioxins and purons is measured through temperature control, particulate matter, NOx, opacity, and CO2. This data for each point is measured 5 times for each minute and averaged every minute. So we know exactly the emissions that are coming out of our stacks at any given point in time during operation. That data is measured either on a weekly, it's reported on a weekly, daily, monthly, quarterly, or annual basis, depending on what the regulation requires. The DEC and the EPA may have separate or different regulations for some of these items. Also, we do stack testing, which is performed every 12 to 30 months, and that's to calibrate these instruments to make sure that they're certified and reading what they need to, performing at their top level and reading the accurate information from our stacks. So alternative fuels, why are we looking at alternative fuels? Really, it's an initiative that we have to reduce within our company. Heidelberg Cement and Lehigh Hansen has a goal to reach 30% alternative fuel use globally by 2030. Lehigh is currently using engineered fuels similar to the Ragger Tail that we're proposing at other plants in the U.S. and also Canada. In Europe, some of these plants are using, whether it's this material or other materials, including rubber products, wood, some plastics, solvents, at a rate of up to 100% fuel replacement. with good success. Air emissions at all our plants are well below the emission limits. These limits don't change. Even with the addition of this fuel, we're still regulated by the EPA and the DEC to meet the same exact limits regardless of if we burn this material or not. Alternative fuels will reduce our fossil fuel consumption, which is part of our company's goal. It's aligned with our global goals for Heidelberg Cement. It also reduces our fuel costs, which accounts for 25% of our total operating costs in Glens Falls. The added benefit, it keeps recyclable materials out of our landfills. I did bring a sample with us today. I could pass that around. This is the ragger tail material. It's a 60-40% mix of plastic trimmings and cardboard fibers from recycled paper mills. Most of you probably use Amazon today. The boxes that you get in the mail are exactly what this product is. That cardboard product is recycled, and the residual trimmings from those envelopes and those plastic tapes and labels are part of this product, as well as the fibers that are non-recyclable from the cardboard itself. This material is fluffy, it's light, it will arrive by truck in an enclosed trailer. It's in a somewhat compacted form with no baling wire or any other kind of metals, and it's fed directly from the truck into a feed hopper, and then it's blown into our burner in the kiln. If you recall, I mentioned the temperature of our flame is 3,500 degrees. At that temperature, everything is fully consumed and destroyed in terms of that product, and it's also chemically combined with our company. We propose to use that at a maximum rate of 15% of our fuel mix. So the rest of our mix will consist of hopefully natural gas. We prefer to burn natural gas because it's cleaner, it's more desirable, and it leads for a more stable operation. Whereas coal can be variable. We do have that's cherry flame. The moisture in the coal is difficult to burn. It also leads to instability in our process, so we tend to prefer natural gas to burn, which has been favorable over the last 5 years or so. We've been burning more or less 100% natural gas, except for the winter months where we're required to burn coal because gas prices are way out of sight due to the heating months.
Sorry, Ned, I just don't want to forget. Excuse me. What is there residual left over after that? I mean, at 1,500 degrees or 3,500 degrees, I'm sure it just... But is there any ash or anything?
Totally consumed. There is no ash generated as a result of firing this product in our kiln. Again, we're regulated by the EPA and the DEC to meet the same exact standards we have whether we're firing coal or natural gas. There is no ash generated from either product. All our internal streams are recycled within our process. So all the dust that is collected by our main stack emission point, the electrostatic precipitator, that dust is captured and is recycled back into our process.
Okay, thank you.
So the ragger tail material will be combined with either coal or natural gas. Each delivery, each truck will be sampled as well as required by the DEC, and we'll also collect that information for our own internal use, and a composite report will be submitted. Now, what is required exactly isn't known yet until we see our permit and what those and what that regulation requires. But we definitely will be sampling that product. We expect to use about, let's say 50 tons a day. That's 2 trucks. This material is delivered in the box trucks at 25 tons per load. And that will be sampled continuously as probably by the hour or every truck load for sure. So in 2016, going back is when we submitted an application for a beneficial use determination. That's a BUD for ragger tail. That allowed us to do the emissions testing under the the supervision of the DEC as a fuel source while keeping our emissions lower than our allowable levels. 2017, we did purchase an alternative fuel system from Italy. The system is commonly used at many locations, and it can handle a variety of products. That was about $1 million investment just for the equipment to do this testing. Lehigh retained a third-party environmental testing firm, which is a requirement by the DEC and the EPA to do our testing during that trial. The testing protocols were approved by the EPA and the DEC. And again, that was observed on site by an officer from the DEC during that process. The testing was conducted using a blend of alternative fuel and coal to demonstrate a worst-case scenario in terms of burning. Coal is it's not as clean, as efficient as natural gas, so that would be considered the worst case. At this time, I will turn it over to Jana to explain some of the regulatory requirements of the testing that we did and some of our results.
Thank you. As Dave said, we're not asking for anything different with the rider tail usage. We will have the same limits that we currently have with permits. As part of the testing protocol, DEC did ask us to, because there's a potential to emit certain constituents, they did have us go through the rigorous process of doing, it's like a 2-week trial where the staff teachers came in, and we do have some slides here to show you how the emissions compared to the emission standard. So on the right-hand side of the chart, that's the current emission standard. This happens to be dioxin, and you see the green bar on the left-hand side. It's what happened during the test trial. So with the usage of this Rager tail at a 15% fuel replacement, we were like 100 times below the emission standard for that. That's the first one. There's more here for you too. For particulate matter, you can see the emission standard on the right, 107 pounds per ton, and during the test we were at 102.23 pounds per ton. So again, well below the national standard. And then THC, the standard on the right is 24, and it's ppm, and during the testing they're around 8. THC is a measure really of the carbon content, and includes all silicate. And then for mercury, we're about 18, and it's pounds per million tons of liquor, and the standard is 55. People see that number and they say, oh my gosh, 55 pounds is the allowable standard. If you do the math, it's 0.0016 ounces per ton. So, again, well below the guideline.
Supervisor Bramer, go ahead.
When I was looking at the test results from with and without rider tail, it looks like mercury was actually one of the things that was going to increase in its emissions. Mm-hmm. Do you have a hypothesis about why that is based on the rider tail? We do. And is there anything that you've done? Yes. Mercury is the limit, again, is 55 pounds per ton. That's a 30-day rolling average. And the EPA comes up with that because mercury is very variable and is dependent. It's found in nature. It's found in the limestone. It's found in the coal. So this is like a 2-week trial burn. The mercury testing portion was only a couple days, and that's the results that you got. If you were to do this test again, it might be higher. It might be lower. So as a whole, we measure our emissions, and they go up and down. They're well below the 55 pounds per ton, but you'll see increases and decreases, basically because of the raw materials and the mercury content of raw materials. I was wondering too if there was during the test burn, I thought I heard bales were wrapped in metal, and that was going into the
During the initial process, when we teamed up with Frontier Fibers, is the company that we're sourcing this product from. They're located in western New York, in the Buffalo area. And initially we did have some issues with products like from pallets, as well as some of the baling wire that they use for the recyclable product. We found that watered up in our system. Since then, upgrades have been done at their facility to remove the products. We actually ceased communications with them until they resolved that particular issue. And now they have increased technology using electromagnetics, metal detectors, as well as air to separate that product. So again, we'll be sampling this product on a continuous basis. We'll also take precautions on our side to install magnets and metal detection if need be, although we don't anticipate that need. Those small pieces, nuts, bolts, welding wire, from time to time that can get into the process through your raw material handling or even the ragger tail product itself. But again, once it hits the kiln at 3,500 degrees, that product is completely destroyed and consumed, and also blends with the clinker product. Those metals are non-detectable. There's no testing for metals out of our stacks. Unfortunately, that technology does not exist today. However, there are other particulates that we are required to meet those levels are indicative of metals that would be in the process, as well as dust.
Supervisor Beatty, you have a question?
Yeah. So the emission standard, okay, that's the maximum amount that you can have according to the DEP?
Yes. It's
Okay.
on a 30-day.
Okay, so that's the maximum you can have?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and you probably may or may not know this, what would be a plant comparable using ragger tail? What would they be putting off in mercury pounds on an average? In other words, where do you fall? You show us yours, and that's great. I appreciate that. I'm just wondering, other plants that use ragger tail, and I assume there's other plants that are using ragger tail around the world, where would they fall with their mercury pounds and comparable to Lehigh?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, we don't have that data. But again, in North America, they're required by this to operate under the same regulation as we would be. I can't speak for European regulation, which I believe is even more stringent than U.S. standards. However, a lot of that is dependent on their raw materials. If they're burning coal, if they're burning stone. We have a plant in Tehachapi, California, which just inherently, that limestone source is inherently high in mercury. So plants like that may not be able to use other products as efficiently as we could because it's in their raw materials. So they have enough to manage without the ability to add any other alternative fuels. They have a difficult time just managing their local resources. But typically those sources do not contain products with mercury levels. The ragger tail itself does not contain mercury. I mean, it may be trace amounts, but again, mercury is contained in pretty much every product that we have around us. 80% of our products that we see around the room were somehow reclaimed from the earth, and that's just a natural element that exists that we manage.
Very good. Well, any questions? Any additional questions? Go ahead.
Seems like I've heard conversations that the supply of natural gas to this area needs to be upgraded. Is that another issue?
Fortunately, at Lehigh, we don't have an issue with supply. We enter a contract with the utility for that supply every year. We actually hedge gas way in advance. We've already bought gas today for 2020 at 40% level. So that supply does exist. However, in the months, high heating months, December, January, February, the price just skyrockets. So it's not economical for us to use natural gas, and you're buying it on the spot. Fortunately, this year, we've had some opportunities to purchase natural gas, which didn't impact us at all, and we didn't have the need to burn coal. However, going forward, we can't predict what those prices are going to do. But I would say the infrastructure as a whole is a big, issue, not just for our plant, but for industry throughout the entire Northeast region, and probably the U.S. as well. I think natural gas is our future, and that's the way to go. Our preference, like I said, is not to burn coal. Number one, it's very expensive. We have to triple handle it. We get it by rail. I would say dealing with the railways is much more difficult than dealing with the utilities who supply natural gas. So that's where the challenge is, but definitely gas is the way of the future.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I learned at the presentation back in February, and I've had subsequent conversations with Mr. Broad about the fact that Lehigh also has protocols and procedures to identify any type of a situation, I guess, would go awry or not be consistent with the way that things are going to be operated. I think any company, needs to have those types of protocols and procedures to identify who does what, when, where, and I was very satisfied with learning that information at the workshop.
We have alarms for everything. The control room operator will get an alarm. It's called an analyzer. Someone's called in and then we review the data every day. We implement data on the averages every morning at the production meeting. We look at all the environmental emissions and safety operations.
For every day that we're out of compliance, we'll realize a fine in the range of $30,000 to $50,000 a day. So we cannot afford to exceed a limit. We're a very small operation these days in a highly competitive market. Just several days of being out of compliance for us would certainly shut us down.
Have you been out of compliance at any point, or?
Nope. There's,
No.
We're regulated, and we have to report when we exceed those emissions.
Correct.
I'll let you talk about that.
Yep, we've had a NOx in March of 2017. We had a 30-day rolling average. Our limit is 2.88. We were at 2.89. That's coming off of from a startup situation. We were shut down, starting back up. NOx is one of those peculiar ones where the limit is based on pounds per ton of clinker produced. But when you're burning just natural gas, you're not producing any clinker, it kind of drives your number up.
Right.
So that was something that kind of cost us a little bit. We have had a couple opacity exceedances. We have a 6-minute average for opacity. Again, we've had a couple of trips on the precipitator due to when we're feeding coal. Sometimes if it's wet, it'll plug something up and you get a sudden surge, and then you might have a 6-minute. But again, that's alarmed and reported immediately.
Travis, did you have a question?
Well, more of a...
And then Mike. Okay.
Thank you. More of a comment. I spoke with these individuals several months ago. I was alerted to the issue by Claudia and some other people, and just thought, my name is Travis White. We had a conversation on the phone several months ago. And I'd just like to say, I looked into this pretty hard at that point in time, and I feel these guys are being as responsible as they can. When you look at the idea of closing the loop on using other people's waste, in your product, I mean, that's what we really ought to be doing. These guys really ought to be commended for doing that. I'll also tell you, having worked in manufacturing for many years, that there's two things that's going to get this guy fired. And one of them is having an employee get hurt or something, and another is to fall out of compliance with some federal or state statute. I mean, you're gone, like Billy Martin's gone. So
Came back again and again, four times.
So I think the incentives are there, for this to be handled correctly, and I would commend it. I mean, the one thing you're going to say is, well, Jesus is great, Travis, but it would be nice if it was in someone else's backyard. And, you can't get away from that, but the idea is that these guys are responsible. I'd also like to mention that the EPA has shut down operations in Glens Falls in the past. The incinerator for the sludge at the wastewater treatment plant was shut down because of that excessive mercury emissions. My concern and your concern should be that that sludge is still being disposed of within the area, and just the fact that when you look at, pounds per ton of ash or whatever, and the way things are being monitored by the EPA, where you had a pure stream of sludge exceeding that problem and having that incinerator shut down, the same material is now being disposed of at Wheelabrator. And while it's mixed with other things, the pounds per ton are less, but the pounds total is the same. You're still getting that same mercury into the air. So if you want to be concerned about some operations, you probably want to be looking at operations like that.
Thank you, Travis. Mike, did you have something?
Chairman, thank you, I do. And I appreciate the second opportunity to see you, because I was at the February meeting. And I think where I want to see is the future. I'm hopeful that you can make this happen. But our recycling industry is in turmoil. And I'm wondering if there's the possibility of you expanding this to other plastic materials, as long as we stand.
I can tell you that we're looking at all products. Plastic is one of them. There's many, again, with technology today, there's been many advances with alternative fuels in Europe. This is a common practice. I mean, I don't think there's any plants that are not using some form of alternative fuels in Germany, some up to 100% replacement. It's a problem for our society. So certainly, based on economics and availability, is another challenge for us in the Northeast. It's not easily accessible. We're not in a very highly populated area. New York City, Boston, I mean, they're 3 hours away, but still, that transportation cost for that product is extremely high. So, as long as it's economical, we'll continue to look at various products. Again, our goal is to get to 30% by 2030. And that's a goal of our global goal for Heidelberg Cement as well as Lehigh Hansen here in North America.
Thank you. Claudia?
Thank you. Just one more question, and I realize I'm putting you on the spot, but so you don't have to give me any kind of binding answer, but we have a lot of industry down in Glens Falls. You're in our backyard, and I've been wondering if industries would ever be willing, when they trip their, say, opacity exceedance level, willing to notify the city so they can put it out on their city website now that it's updated and has notifications for all kinds of different things, and residents living in different parts of the city could be notified, hey, we just had this exceedance. Maybe if you have, asthma or you're a child or an old person, you stay inside for the next, 2 hours or whatever it is. Similar to when we have smog alerts. It's a bad day for ozone, stay inside today if you have problems with your breathing or whatever. I would like to be able to know that information. Sometimes you smell things in downtown and you don't know if that's something to be worried about or if it's just like, okay, it's not a big deal and it's going to go away. But that would be something I would love to see our industry partners do for the city residents.
For starters, opacity is interesting because we do have some interlocks in our system. When the operators know what the opacity is, there's like a sudden surge of coal, and then we exceed the 6 minute, it's shut down. So there may be a 6-minute window, but then we're shut down, until we fix the problem. So it's a pretty quick window. Again, we do notify the DEC.
Right. Right. Why can't you tell the city? I don't. That's a tough
A lot of that
question.
information is available on the DEC websites, and there are websites to monitor and track.
Sure, but that's like 3 months later we can figure it out.
Something we can
Yeah,
discuss
we can
with
think
our...
about that.
Yeah, thank
Sounds
you.
good.
The question is, your emissions just isn't in the city of Glens Falls.
There's true too.
And whether it's finished paper or anything else, it's really on a regional
Yes.
basis than just the...
But again, we're testing out of our stacks 5 samples per each minute, so we know exactly what is coming out of our stacks at any given moment. We know where we stand.
And I can say from the early days of people that were living in the East End, they had snow generally in July, August, and September from prior to the additional environmental work that was done. Literally, people in the East End would go out in the morning and there would be a little material, a reminder of Portland Cement at work in
Yeah,
the city of
and
Glens
again,
Falls.
those regulations have changed significantly, especially in 2015 with the particular matter. We used to have to report opacity. We were regulated to 20%, and we were grandfathered at 20% on our stacks, which is a huge amount of particulates being emitted into the atmosphere. If you see 20%, that's like a cloud. It could be all dust. And today, if we see any trace ounce of anything coming out of our stack, we're out of compliance. So physically, that can't happen with today's regulatory requirements.
Last question, Duggar.
Thank you. Two things. Number one is, it sounds like it's, once it is tripped or code capacity, it's immediately fixed. So I like Claudia's idea, but on the other hand, it looks like to me, by the time you actually got the alert that Glens Falls or the surrounding area, it had already been fixed. Am I right with that assumption? Okay, so basically, yeah, you let the DEC know, because that's by law, you're supposed to, and so forth and so on, but I guess there's no advantage or no real, because it's fixed so quickly, you send out the alert to Queensbury, by the way, it's fixed already, so ignore that last alert. That's what I'm saying. That's number one. Number two is, I didn't make that meeting, but I did read up on all these material, and I think you guys are being excellent corporate citizens. I mean, aside from the fact that it's 90 jobs in Glens Falls, I think in today's world, sometimes we get overexcited about things, and sometimes we should be overexcited about certain things. But to me, you fall within every guideline, you follow every EDC, federal guidelines, you do it openly, you do it on above board, you hold meetings. You're the type of company I think we should be encouraging to be a better environmental participation and partner in our region. So I just want to say thank you for being so open and transparent.
On behalf of the board, Dave, Jana, and John, I want to thank you. I'd echo Supervisor Beatty's comments. Just the fact that you've come and you've shared information here today, means you're a good corporate citizen. You're trying to do the right thing, and as a taxpayer in Warren County, I appreciate that. And again, thank you for your efforts. It's a great big competitive world out there. You can do one of two things. You can increase the cost of your product, or you can reduce manufacturing costs. So it appears as if you're making that effort, and hopefully you'll be around in the Glens Falls area for another 100 years. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Ed, do you want to show some slides?
Sure. Sure. Come on, Ed, show some slides.
Okay. I think our anchor people have arrived as well.
Thank you.
Down here.
Yeah.
Sorry there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
$50.
I know, I need the clicker.
Do you use that?
No, I don't have the,
Clicker?
Can I use it?
Kind of clicker for the slides?
okay. Okay.
How's that working?
It should work once we get to,
You got to do it. Walk over to the house.
okay.
Kind of doing a Joe Biden thing,
Button for you?
Hey, brother.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, sure.
Ed, thank you.
All right, hit the first line. In response to a follow-up to our material on the segments of the area, and for discussion with Supervisor Wild, what we did here is, through the data, called this data out with the New York State Department of Labor on job reports to compare the Glens Falls MSA, which is Warren and Washington County. On the right-hand side is really 4 counties: Albany County, Saratoga County, Rensselaer County, and Schenectady County. And if you look, and again, there is sizable difference in employment between our 2 counties and the 4 counties of the area. However, you can see a very interesting compatibility between Warren, Washington, and the capital region in terms of the slices of the pie designated to manufacturing in the area, of the government, of hospitality, education, and so forth in this particular area. And it actually shows on a percentage basis, Warren and Washington County has a larger share of our pie for manufacturing than the pie in the capital region. Again, much smaller in numbers, but it shows you, again, almost like the slide we had at our last meeting, the two centers of economic are really the Warren-Washington area in the north of this district, and in the capital region, it's the capital district in this particular area here. So in essence, there are kind of really two super sectors in our particular region of the 8 counties which make up the capital district report. And again, if you go to the next slide, again, you will see the similarity in terms of the growth in some of our areas as well as in the capital region. That's why we pass this out, take a little time to digest at the...
Did you have a question, Mike?
Yeah, I do. Ed, if you don't mind, is this a healthy mix for us?
Oh, no.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is countless.
Yeah.
And, my next question is it a healthy mix?
I think it's a diversity mix. One of the things in our area that is a little bit unique is that because of this diversity that we have in the area, when we have economic growth in the country and in the state, our area will grow, but it will not be a boom. And the same thing that occurs when there is a downslide in our economy, we necessarily, because of the diversity, will not be affected in that area. Within, in the next presentation, we will break down the manufacturing and the industry. In our, when there is a downslide in our medical device areas, and we've seen that go up and down with the excise tax and so forth, that has effect in certain areas for that employment. But because of the strength that we have in our paper industry and the strength that we have in the other areas, that is a factor. Bad weather creates problems for our tourism industry in that area. And again, that's another sector in a particular area. So I think one of the strengths that we have is we don't have quite the diversity that we had 15, 20 years ago, but we continue to maintain a diversity in our industries, in manufacturing in this particular area. So I think that's positive. As an example, when we had the mortgage foreclosures that hit the country maybe 5, 6 years ago, we usually are a little delayed in that. We did have mortgage foreclosures in our area, but it was not as heavy as in other particular areas that are dependent on 1 or 2 major industries in the area. So it is important for us to have that diversity. We saw some of the diversity here with the Portland Cement, with those 90 jobs are relatively high-paying jobs in our particular area. And again, our retail industry is obviously going through major changes now, and that will be reflected down the road as to how that is adjusted in our area. The hospitality is on the rise in our particular area as we have received and we've seen a number of new hotels crop up on exit 18, exit 19, and also looking at the Lake George area with the Marriott that opened a couple of years ago, Dade County, in that particular group. So those two areas. So the kind of the key observations from a little bit of this is that, again, the employment factors, and this is the scale I was talking about, is 434,000 total employment workforce in the Albany, Schenectady, Rensselaer, Saratoga area. And as I've indicated, that's about 7 times our larger than the Glens Falls MSA, again, which is Warren in Washington County, which is about 56,000 people that are at work in that area. And you may recall the chart from our last time, a good percentage of the people from neighboring Washington County, 47%, migrate outward daily for work in a particular area. We're trying also to get a little bit more of a handle on where, and there is some data out there now as to where those people are going. In the Warren County area, we're at about 24%. So interesting that one of the largest, and while it's one of the bigger populated areas, is Saratoga County, where they're migrating over 50% outward. And a good share of that are state workers in Albany, but also SUNY. But they're also beginning to migrate north into Warren and Washington County to a certain extent. Some similarities in terms of, I mentioned again, through the super sectors for percentages and compositions in our particular areas. Differences: Glens Falls has a little larger manufacturing sector, a little smaller education and health sector. Government hiring is increasing in Glens Falls. Again, when they say Glens Falls, we mean Warren and Washington County, and somewhat decreasing in the capital region. That fluctuates up and down very much. So, as I've indicated at the very bottom, because of the proximity in the adjoining counties in our area and the Northway, there is an overlap in cross migration to back and forth in a particular area. So we go from the employment area to just take a look at the growth pattern. And so the capital region is defined as 8 counties in our area. The northern is Warren, Washington, and then we have the 4 capital district counties, and then we have 2 to the south of Albany, and that is Columbia and Greene. That makes up the capital region in our particular area. So this aligns with the competition through our CFA process that is established. So when they say the capital region for this report, it is includes the 8 counties. Columbia and Greene has similarity to Warren and Washington County. And then the growth, we broke this growth down on the next slide, which shows out of these 8 counties, there were 3 growth, and Saratoga had a 1% growth in population from 16 to 17, Schenectady County 0.4%, in Albany. There was no change in 16 to 17 in Rensselaer in Warren County, and there was a slight decrease with Washington County. 0.3, Columbia and Greene were also reduced somewhat. So again, not we'd like to see a plus in our population growth in our area. We have to continue to work on that. And then finally, the not to confuse ourselves here, the metropolitan statistical area, which is what the Adirondack Transportation Council goes by, consists of Glens Falls and Washington County in these particular areas. And again, that's a comparison of that region to other regions in these particular areas as well. It's a lot of data, but I think it's kind of helpful to understand a little bit of our composite and makeup of where our jobs are, where we are in comparison to just the capital district in the area, and certainly one of the things that we're looking at as you get north. And again, we recognize that in Warren County, 94% of the land mass is under the jurisdiction of the Adirondack Park Agency. So just by that definition in statutory legislation adopted in 1974, it has restricted growth in the North Country. We have our North Country supervisors here that can attest to it. Obviously, Warrensburg is kind of on the cusp, having a designation as hamlet, but it has impeded our growth in Warren County. And I know organizations continue to work on efforts. Matt continues to take the mantle up, along with Craig and others, in trying to modify and liberalize some of these zoning restrictions through the area. They make it very difficult. You may recall a constitutional amendment had to be undertaken to swap some land to assist in industry up in Essex County. That's a heck of a process to have to go through to be placed on the ballot for a constitutional amendment. It has to pass 2 consecutive legislative sessions and then placed on the ballot. We had the opportunity back in March to hear from the Lieutenant Governor. Also wanted just to recognize a familiar face to Warren County for many years. 37 years, Arnie Will has retired from Empire State Development, and Arnie Will was a very responsive individual, always available for communication, and always gave a straight answer when we would talk about development, and we wish Arnie well in retirement. Part of the change, and Arnie has been working on this, is to bring in the new group of a couple of new people at Empire State Development, is to undertake a series of familiarization tours with Warren County. The first tour we undertook back in the end of March was to several locations within the Glens Falls, Queensbury area. And then on the next tour coming up in May, we'll probably have to divide this into 2 separate tours, is northern Warren County to hit sites in the particular areas with Empire State Development. So they get a flavor firsthand as to the diversity geographically and the wonderful economic opportunities that we do have from North Creek down through the other towns to the capital region in the area. Just wanted to mention, last week it was announced 2 transportation grants. 2 of the 11 grants awarded in the capital region. One went to Warrensburg for their River Street development, and congratulations Kevin and the group that put that together. And so that project and the next project in the city of Glens Falls for continuation of developing a dedicated bike lane from Hudson Avenue down Murray Street with a foot pedestrian walk bike bridge adjacent to the current bridge, so that we can get the pedestrians and the bicyclists off the bridge on Murray Street, where there is, we speak of diversity of traffic from the still logging trucks from Finch Paper to regular deliveries that are coming out of the particular area. So those were 2 of only 72 grants in the state that were awarded. This came from a national, so what we are going to do from this, and it's very interesting, is what matters most. This was done by site selectors nationally. So you take in states from the south, the southwest, the entire state, and if you look carefully at this, at the top of the list is your workforce skills. And that is quite evident as we've talked about that and you've seen in the paper and talked to your neighboring industries in the area, is the lack of workforce skills from your current workforce. We're not even talking about the high level of employment here, just to update and educate ongoing training for the workforce skills. Transportation infrastructure is also, we recognize, a major factor of moving. That's why you're seeing all of these warehouses suddenly being developed through our area, is to be able to get their product out in an area. And again, number 3 is workforce development on how we can do this. And higher education, we go down the list, but at the very end of this, it's very interesting to see this, is number 10, incentives. Now, what we've asked this summary site selection group is to see if we can break that down, because I think that this survey here, if you showed this in our area, incentives would be ranking a little bit higher. But the incentives do not necessarily rise to the highest level that may be perceived out into this area. And I think that is one of the goals of the Authority Budget Office and others to see if a project really needs funds. And we know that there are many that do on a small scale, from our LDC to others. But again, we should not be in a position that a company needs to be able to have the but for this, they are not able to undertake, development in a particular area. And so as we go forward, this is keeping in mind. Again, I would say that number 10 in our upstate area would be ranked probably more in the middle than number 10. I still believe that the top of the list of workforce skills, re-education, the infrastructure, and particularly for us, the lack of continuation of cell and broadband in the northern part of Warren County has a particular impact on our area. And so that really, I think, would be expanded beyond transportation infrastructure to general infrastructure in our area is needed in a particular area. And then speaking of infrastructure, again, this is a major project we've shown in the past, and the Tourism Committee has talked about the impact of tourism for our area. And here again is how to address a $24 million wastewater treatment plant facility without having the total impact on the 900 residents and businesses in Lake George. Should there not be some mechanism that users of the system, the visitors that we have, pay a share of those improvements through some kind of mechanism for that to occur? And I know there's ongoing discussions on adjustments in sales tax and OC tax and things like this. But when you go to other communities and regions and pay your bill at the hotel and so forth, you see a whole diversity list of additional charges that come there, and it's higher, but it's going to purposes such as parking, it's going to purposes for roads and bridges in those communities, as well as marketing. And here we have a sewage treatment plant that has a impact much higher than just because it's of the village of Lake George in a particular area. So I think that it's important that we try to work with the village and town to find ways to provide some assistance. There is another funding application possibility through the New York State that has more, as I've indicated, their funding. Senator Schumer visited along with Senator Little to lend their support to the Lake George cause. And so I want to just close with two quick things. One is on the affordable housing. What we will have for the LDC meeting is an updated resolution that EDC has committed up to $20,000 for this study. In discussions with Wayne and Patricia Tatis, what we will do is to develop an MOU with Warren County Planning and have those funds go into a special account to the Warren County Planning so that we can take advantage of the planning expertise, particularly Pat Tatis, who you don't have to come out of Warren County in order to get an expert. Pat Tatis is one of our key experts on housing, and I think it's logical to have this opportunity to move forward based in the Warren County Planning Board rather than having EDC. We feel that we'd be very supportive and helpful, but I think Warren County Planning has the expertise. These funds that are incorporated in there will be undertaken for purposes of soliciting a market feasibility study, working in conjunction with Housing Community Renewal of New York State to show the needs assessment as well as the market in the various communities in the North Country. So I think that based on what you see, a number of supervisors or deputy supervisors attended our meeting with Darren Scott at Crandall Library several weeks ago, and we want to follow up and not lose the momentum so that we will be advancing funding from EDC to be put into the pot of Warren County Planning, along with money that the LDC supported last time. And then just finally, they did restore funding for the film tax credit program, which Andrew Meter has been working with a number of films, TV shows on Netflix and HBO that provide economic impact, and that due to the shortness of time, Andrew Meter was going to be here today, but I canceled him out. You'd be here till noon. So we're going to have him at the next meeting to give an update on that particular area. So.
Great, thank you very much, Ed, appreciate it. Okay, very, very helpful. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and whenever I look at population numbers, not getting too deep into the weeds of birth, migration, etc., I think average household size really helps in terms of the population numbers, because if you continue to see a decline in average household size and all other things being equal in terms of vacancy and occupancy, the population has to decline. And I think that it'd be interesting to see what's happening with our average household size, especially if we get it broken down by municipalities, but I expect it probably varies from municipality.
It does. Your households are smaller, but it falls larger, as an example, and then it gets diversified in the North Country. And of course, this does take into account your summer residents. Important part of our account.
Are we leveling off on average household size countywide, or is this continuing to affect?
I think that basically, based on the lack of growth in the family size, I would say it's kind of leveling off.
Any idea what that is employing? Every number. It's not important. When I look at population, that's what I like to look at, because that's really what's been driving population. Even if you're adding units, if your average household size is declining, you can actually lose net population, even though you have more households.
Right.
Mike, did you have something?
I did, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be quick. Ed, on page 14, you have this top 10 location criteria. Could you, one of the next times we get together, give me a plus or minus ranking of where you think we stand with the areas that we compete with? And also, I guess, as I think forward about that, what kind of industry should we really be targeting? Because we're not going to get Amazon or Google, right? But where should our focus be, and kind of understand where we need to go to?
I think two things again, and it's still true today as it was 5-10 years ago. We saw it demonstrated here this morning. 75 to 80% of job creation in the North Country, Warren County, comes from existing businesses or retention. And here this morning we heard Portland, Cement, still called Portland Cement, have a need from an energy basis in order for them to stay competitive. So I think our approach has to be one of working with working with businesses to see how we can be helpful to them in infrastructure needs, whether it's improving water, whether it's improving sewer, whether the North Country with a lack of cell coverage and broadband are economic. It's not a luxury on wanting speed to download an HBO series. It's for survival of the businesses, so that our friends, the goat cheese folks, can take orders without having to move their location. So I think we have to focus on that, as well as looking at the type of related industries that are suppliers to respective manufacturers in this area. We have some centers of, as an example, medical devices. And with the recent transaction here, we end up actually now with 3 major medical device companies with the sale of a portion of the Glens Falls plant to it's one of the largest companies in the world. And they have over $1 billion in sales in this one component area. So I think that we want to tailor make those and see if we can bring in the suppliers to those to be helpful in the particular area and in the region, so that we can locate to help them get their supplies earlier is another. The other thing that hinders us is that 94% factor in terms of having large. You see these big projects in East Skodak that is 500 acres to have a large facility for Amazon in that particular area. We have not amassed ownership of that kind of property, and going into the North Country, you're going to have no natural gas north of Lake George. There's no sewer in many of the areas. There's no water. So we are constricted to a great extent on certain types of industries in Queensbury, Glens Falls, and to the North Country that may be related to wood products, as well as other kinds of needs in those areas. So I think that we have, again, that diversity with our county in order to stay competitive, unlike some other counties that don't have the restrictions of Adirondack Park Agency. And admittedly, a good portion of the park is, we're not going to build on a mountaintop up there over in the Luzerne.
Supervisor Beatty, last question.
Just a couple quick comments, that's it, and I'm done. I noticed the Glens Falls metro area has gone down in population every year for the last 8 years, according to the chart. That's disturbing, but not disturbing, but it's cause for concern. And I agree with you when you say, and Phil Morris, who is a big proponent of developing our current companies and developing how to grow our current companies that are here. I think that's one of the reasons why he said don't screw around with the airport runway. But he said let's develop what we got here.
I knew you'd get that comment.
I had to. When you mentioned Phil Morris, I knew that was going to happen.
You knew that was coming, but the guy's the most successful guy to ever come out of the area. So I kind of give him some credit.
I have a lot of respect for Phil.
Yeah. So that's it. Those two comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next
Other
time,
than being a Red Sox fan, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
next
That's
on
where
the
I vote for
agenda,
Ryan.
I welcome Adirondack North Country Association. Caitlin, did you?
Morgo and Danny.
Welcome to both of you. Yes.
Do you want us at the microphone? Does it matter? You do.
Yeah, why don't you? Yes.
Don't eat those. That's good? Perfect. Hi there, I'm Caitlin Wargo, and I have the pleasure of being Communications and Development Director at the Adirondack North Country Association. We are known as ANCA, and for those of you in the room who aren't familiar with our work, we are an economic development organization based in Saranac Lake. We are growing what we call the new economy in 14 County North Country. We focus on local food, local businesses, and local clean energy as a way to use the resources, the traditional resources we have in our communities to build a foundation for a resilient economic future. We have the pleasure also of having Pat Hadich as one of our board members, also Chris Hunsinger. Warren County has supported our work as a member for a number of years, and we're here today specifically to let you know about a program that my colleague Danny Delaney is managing that, especially given what Mr. Bartholomew was talking about, I think will be of particular interest. In 2018, we released the results of analysis that we undertook with partners in the region to look at our county level data and see what was growing, where should we best be focusing in the next 5 years. One of the things that came out of that study was the awareness of the silver tsunami and the 10 to 16,000 small businesses owned by retirement age people in the North Country. As a result of that, using member support, like Warren County support, Danny developed this program, the Center for Businesses in Transition, and secured federal funding for it. This project is developed to specifically find the folks who are looking to retire, who maybe don't have a transition plan in place, and help them find the resources and partner with potential buyers or other ownership mechanisms that will keep those businesses open, operating in our communities, employing the people they do, and potentially even bring in new entrepreneurs to the region. So that's why Danny's here, and thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Caitlin, for that nice introduction. So while we were, can you hear me? So while we were doing the regional economic analysis with the Center for Rural Entrepreneurship, we were also doing a number of interviews throughout the region with community champions and individuals working in their communities to hear about what this really looked like in their communities. If as folks were retiring, how many retiring folks ended up just liquidating their business in town, or also so many different communities and legislators and individuals within their area were already putting things in place to help people with succession plans, whether it was the SBDC or a local chamber or an IDA or an economic development professional. There was a lot of really great stuff already happening and a lot of technical services that were already available to folks. But there wasn't really a central place that people could go to share the work that they had been doing, or to sort of talk about some of the best practices that they already had in place to be able to start thinking about how do we do this. This is a national problem, but how do we utilize a regional approach to come up with some solutions together? So starting in January of this year, ANCA, in partnership with over 50 different organizations who have pledged support, but there's also 8 offices throughout the region who are either chambers of commerce or IDAs who are specifically have a community liaison in their office who is out in their community talking to retiring business owners, talking to prospective entrepreneurs, seeing what they need, and providing programming in their area to talk about what does this look like. And even though, a lot of folks nationally say that they are going to utilize their retirement from their business to fund their retirement, their business sales to fund their retirement. Oftentimes that doesn't work out. Only less than 20% of businesses who choose to do that, it ends up working out. And a lot of times that's just because folks don't have a plan in place early enough. It takes approximately at least 3 to 5 years to really get your taxes in order, to really get all of the things you need in place to be able to retire with the succession plan that will pay out for you in some way or another. But there's SBDCs are doing really great training about this. Chambers are doing great training. There's lots of technical folks who can help to make those connections, but it's not always clear where to start. So starting in January of this year, this program has sort of come together to work with different folks in their communities to bring these services to them and to let folks know what is available. So there's a little bit of a matchmaking component. So as we're out talking to retiring business owners and really collecting their stories, talking about, a lot of folks might decide to sell their business on the open market. Maybe they do have a family transition, somebody else in their business or family who would like to take it over. And then some are really looking into worker ownership as well. So cooperative development, ways to help incentivize their employees to be able to take it over. So as we're collecting those stories about what folks want to do and who they are as people and why somebody else would want to take it over, we're also talking to entrepreneurs or folks who have been thinking about, I've always wanted to own a business. There are some restrictions that makes it a little bit more difficult in the North Country to start a business, as we know from the APA. But if you're taking over something that already exists, you can take it and make it your own, and also save a service or a asset in somebody's community that already has great books, and you can see what's, you guys know this already, I'm speaking to the choir, but that already has a plan in place for success and has been doing it for 10, 20, 30 years, and wants to see somebody else take it over and wants that to be a part of their story going forward. This is a lot of businesses, over 10,000 is a lot, but we're really looking at, ways that we can share programming and information that will work for everyone. So what folks, the sort of good referrals or the folks that we're looking for are businesses that are having trouble navigating available resources to think about their succession plan. Somebody who isn't able to find a suitable successor, or if it's having a hard time accessing capital to make that transition work, or aspiring entrepreneurs who've been thinking about doing something that this might be come up for them. So in 2019, we have a number of different programs. We have over 17 different programs that we are either hosting or sponsoring throughout the region, including a sort of a Prepare for the Future workshop series. One of the nice things about this is that it is, we are doing them in person at a bunch of different places throughout the region, but they're also online, so you can attend online. or you can watch them afterwards. So we know that small business owners don't have the time to always go to a workshop or seminar at 8 a.m. on a Thursday. They're on Wednesdays, but we're trying to make things as accessible and have the most sustainability as possible for folks who might be interested in that information. There's some business valuation things online if you're wondering how much your business is worth, how much should you make it worth, that we've already put up, some additional sort of beginning overview resources as well. There's a specific agricultural farm transition series that's going on too for folks who are in agriculture where they might have some different hurdles to cover. And we are looking at doing with St. John Fisher College a family transition program with peer-to-peer networking and growth for family transitions. And we're working very closely with the Cooperative Development Institute and also an expert in the SBDC who works with cooperatives. So if somebody is looking into worker ownership, how to navigate that as a transition. If your employees maybe don't all have the capital, what resources are available to make that happen for folks. So we've been doing this for a while, it's almost probably been 2 years since we started these interviews and starting this program up. But although it just started in January, there's been a number of different folks who have reached out in Warren County that we are currently working with. So Judy of Garnet Studio, if anybody's familiar with her business, so she was one of the first folks who reached out to us. So we've been talking about her business, which does Adirondack garnets in North River, and she's been doing this for, I want to say, over 20 years, and she wants somebody to take that studio and move it downtown into North Creek. She wants to find somebody who she can teach how to turn the stones and to make sure that all that she's done with the jewelry making that she's been doing for all these years is a skill that she can pass on, and that stays a part of the community. So we've been working with her. I've presented probably at least 15 times about her business to different crowds, because you never know, someone's wife or sister or brother might just, that's something they do at home, but that would really be their dream come true, is to do sort of an actual job, taking their home craft or something that they love doing at home and turning it into a real job for them and a source of income. So we have one large business looking into worker ownership with the Cooperative Development Institute in Warren County. I apologize that I can't tell you who it is because it's confidential, but they have over 15 employees, and they're looking to see if there might be the opportunity for them to be able to transition their business to their employees. There are 4 different accommodations, so lodging places in Warren County, most of which are public knowledge that are just for sale on the market, but we're excited to be able to share that story with folks, that there are some lodging opportunities here if you want to own a B&B or a hotel or motel. And one of the things that we're doing with that kind of thing in particular for tourism is in June, I think it's June 20th, we're putting on a webinar that says, is owning a B&B or motel right for you? And then highlighting those businesses. So we're going to have folks see if it's right for them and then talk about the ones that are available, sort of getting folks, a lot of people say, I've always wanted to own a B&B, or I've always wanted to own a hotel in the North Country. But really getting them to the point where, okay, is this financially feasible? Is this a lifestyle I want to take on? And then getting to them to the point of seeing themselves in an actual location. So those ones that are in Warren County will be highlighting at that event. It's an online webinar, so anyone can do it. We've had 2 entrepreneurs who are interested in businesses in Warren County that we've connected. Nothing has happened yet. Again, it's a new program, but just so you know. And then also we've had one investor generally interested in the Gore region who we've sent to a whole bunch of different people. So I'm not sure if anything has happened there, but we're excited to be able to make those connections and talk to any community person who's interested or knows everybody in town, because no one's going to come up and talk to me, I'm a random person, about their plans to retire. It's often a very sort of sensitive or confidential question. But, if you want to refer them to us or want to talk to me about it, we're happy to go in and interview folks and talk about their stories. We're not real estate agents, we're not accountants, we're not business brokers. But if folks want to talk about their succession plan, get some learning resources, and if they are publicly looking for someone, I really have the pleasure and honor of being able to tell their story to other people and how they might be able to transfer their business, but all of the skills and all of the things that they've learned over time to someone else who's really interested and wants to keep that dream alive. So I think Caitlin handed out some handouts, but I have some about the workshops too if you want those before you leave. And I really thank you for having had us here today to talk about.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Go ahead. Great.
Thanks for coming down from
up north to here. Warren County is mostly in the Adirondack Park, and we often look southward for our economic vitality, but a lot of our county looks northward for to the heart for what drives us, and we are a gateway here. So thank you for keeping us in mind and for working with us, being part of the capital region economic development rather than the North Country. We get left out on some important studies and projects that happen, but thank you for all the work you do.
Our pleasure. I would like to say it's interesting what Ed was saying, where quality of life is down at the very bottom of
Right.
the thing. For entrepreneurs, for ANCA staff, I think it's maybe number one for why we end up in the North Country. And, but for large businesses, obviously, that's the space ANCA plays is also building that quality of life, keeping those main streets vital so that when people do want to come here, they've got that vitality and they can see that they're
Mr. Chairman, did you have a question or comment?
The employee sales, those are actual ESOPs, employee stock
We help them to connect with folks. So if they're looking to do an ESOP, we have a particular organization that we're working with that we can transfer them over to. But the one that's in Warren County that's looking into worker ownership cooperatives as opposed to an ESOP. Sometimes ESOPs can be a little bit expensive for a small business to look into because of it's sort of a longer term trajectory than some folks might be comfortable with if they want to retire sooner than that. And there's a lot more things going on right now for worker ownership in terms of financial ability. Previously, some of the things that were financially applicable for like one business owner would not apply to somebody looking to start a worker ownership cooperative. But those things are expanding, and there's a lot more research being done on that. Coming up in June, we're actually going to be doing a roundtable about this is probably more information than you want, but a roundtable about sort of the financial incentives for worker ownership in cooperatives, and I'd love to send anyone an invitation to that is interested. And there is one of the seminar series, the one in June, will be about worker cooperatives as well, and the differences between those and ESOPs and why you might want one versus the other. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So we'll be asked for this follow-up information because we've got some events coming in June, the Common Ground event, to forward everything to you, Amanda, and then just forward an email with links to folks. Okay, great. That's what we'll do.
Okay, very good.
I want to make sure you know what we're doing and you can participate.
That being said, since we're running behind, can we get a motion to adjourn? Supervisor Beatty, seconded by Supervisor Strauss. All those in favor? Aye. We're going to just quickly jump into LDC, so stay tuned.